Raisin Road. Whatever the outcome today, he knew that he'd never forget the image now branded into his mind's eye of his lovely soulmate, stripped naked and bound X-shaped with pairs of her own tights to the lower banisters of their staircase, her head drooped, her chestnut hair unbound and hanging in long, ratty hanks, her slim, marble-white body mottled with bruises, streaked with blood. "You have to understand," the older one had said some time around 3 that morning, by which point Kelso sat stiff and sweat-soaked in the dining-room chair they'd brought into the hall and tied him to with the Hoover flex so that he could watch. "We couldn't do any of this to you. Because just before dawn, you've got to go down to that bank you manage with your best suit on and your keys in your pockets as if everything is normal. A bit earlier than usual, of course. But not so much, and not in any kind of state that'll make anyone who sees you suspicious. But even so, we had to make it absolutely clear what you'll be facing if you try to fuck us over. You see, my young pal here, he's going to tail you down to the bank, and he's going to park across the road till you've gone inside. Now, up until that moment, I reckon it's safe to say we'll have full control over you. But we're under no illusions. Once you're in there, things are different. There'll be nothing to stop you picking the nearest phone up and calling the filth. Except the knowledge that we've still got your missus. And that nasty little question that'll be niggling away in the back of your head. If that was the way they treated her when I hadn't given them any grief, what in Christ's name will it be like if I try to double-cross them?" Kelso shuddered at the memory of those cold, reptilian eyes fixed on him from the 2 slits in the bright green balaclava. It was too easy to imagine that there was nothing human behind them. "So, you won't try anything stupid, will you?" "I swear it," the captive had said. "Please, just don't hurt her any more." "You know, I actually think I trust you, Brian." This might have sounded more convincing had the older one's pistol not been jammed so hard into Kelso's right temple that his entire head was crooked painfully to the left. "Just don't give me any fucking reason to regret that judgment, yeah? Because if you do, what happens after that will be unfucking imaginable." By the time he was on Welton Road, it was past 8, and the veils of frozen fog were thinning and clearing. The 2 hoodlums would like that, because, as they'd continually reminded him, they'd be watching his progress and keeping a sharp lookout for any anomalies, like so-called members of the public displaying unusual interest in his activities, or maybe a helicopter hovering in the near distance. Not that there was any possibility of this, because Kelso, though he'd been tempted on entering the bank, had eventually made no phone call. What would have been the point? In the short time available before the villains became suspicious, the police wouldn't have been able to mount any kind of response other than sending uniformed officers scrambling to the house and the bank, which would have achieved nothing. Because the older villain was unlikely to still be at the former location, and though the younger one had tailed Kelso down here, he'd vanished after that, presumably secreting himself somewhere nearby to watch. Both of them would have been able to get away relatively easily, maybe taking Justine with them, which would have been the end for her. So, Kelso had complied. Naturally he'd complied. But he still had no idea what to expect next. As he approached the junction with Horncastle Lane, he saw the bus stop in question, though nobody was waiting there. Rush hour was now upon them, as indicated by the increasingly heavy traffic, but this was a rural area, and the few commuters living in the villages round here were more likely to travel by car. Before Kelso had set out that morning, they'd searched his vehicle for a tracker, and had even advised him that, when he got to the handover site, he'd be searched again, just in case he'd somehow managed to fit a wire and had been feeding covert info to the police all along. If that was the case, he'd never see his wife again. Or anything, in fact, because he'd be shot on the spot. The older one's preferred method, or so he'd boasted, was a slug through the back of the neck.